أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن الكريم والفرقان الحميد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كل نفس ذائقة الموت صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الأمين الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Before I start my talking, I would like every one of us just send durood and salat and salam upon our holy beloved Prophet, Prophet of peace, Prophet of human being, jinn and all creation, Sayyidina Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. And this is actually ordered from Allah Almighty as well, when Allah Almighty mentioned in Quran by saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلام عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم. I would request people, some people are over there, some people are over there, and some in other hall. So I would request them to come in this hall so that the delivering of message could be more easier. If you can listen, please. Qarisa, just remove this wall, please. Jazakallah. If you can, please come in this hall. Jazakallah khairan. Alhamdulillah, we have enough space here, right here. Just keep on saying Durood Pak. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa shafi'ina wa habibina wa barik wa sallim salatu wa salaman alayka ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If somebody is needed the chairs, they can get chair right here and can sit right here. Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah. You know, in these days, every single person has opinion. Opinion in every single thing. Do you have religion? Opinion. Yes. Somebody has no. Do you have belief in one God? Opinion. Somebody is saying, yes, Alhamdulillah, as we Muslim believe in one God. And another people, no. There are a lot, million and billion God for them. They think like this. Do you believe in angels? Opinion. Do you believe that there would be a life after death? Opinion. Do you believe there is paradise and hell? Opinion. We are actually in the world of opinion. Every single person might be having opinion by every single person. Accepted by every single person, which is death. If you ask a Muslim, do you have to die? Yes. Non-Muslim? Yes. even those who are not having any religion, mulhid, they also agree that there would be death. As a Muslim, our belief is that we are in middle of our journey. There was a life before this life when we were in alami arwah. Allah Almighty has mentioned in Quran, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ لَتُبَيِّنُنَّهُ وَلَا تَكْتُمُونَهُ فَنَبُذُوهُ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِهِمْ أَيْضًا. And in another ayah, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ لَتُبَيِّنُوا وَإِذْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ النَّبِيِّينَ لَمَا آتَيْتُكُم مِّن كِتَابٍ وَحِكْمَةٍ ثُمَّ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مُصَدِّقٌ لِّمَا مَعَكُمْ لَتُؤْمِنُنَّ بِهِ وَلَتَنصُرُنَّهُ قَالَ أَأَقْرَرْتُمْ وَأَخَذْتُمْ عَلَى ذَلِكُمْ إِصْرِي قَالُوا أَقْرَرْنَا. The time when nobody with his body was in this world, Alamul Arwah, before we were created in this world, we were in Alam Arwah when Allah Almighty asked us what to do after you became a part of this world. When our Prophet would come, what would you do? So every single person's soul said, we would help your Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and we would believe in your Prophet of peace, Sayyidina Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So this was actually starting of our journey when we were in Alamil Arwah, and then after that we came in the abdomen of our mothers, and then after that the journey continues, and we came in this world, and Alhamdulillah we are blessed with this life, and so blessed that Allah Almighty has given us such a blessing: Iman, Islam, Ihsan, Quran, uncountable blessing from Allah Almighty. And after this journey, the part of this journey ends with the death we will transfer in another part of this journey, which is grave. And after this grave, when Allah Almighty will wish, every single person will be resurrected. That is Bas. And this is our part of Iman. We know that as a Imani Mufassal, amantu billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawmil akhiri wal qadri khayrihi wa sharrihi min Allah ta'ala wal ba'th ba'd al maut. So Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, we are blessed that we are granted with Iman, and we are actually with the family, that family whose beloved brother Abrar passed away. We are with them. You know, the death is actually biggest lesson given by Allah Almighty. Hours and hours taqreeb, bayan could be delivered, but might be forgetting. But one death is actually similar to 100 times, 100 hours delivering of speech. One person is gone from this world, but he or she has given us such a big blessing, such a big lesson. And this is actually, the person is not saying, but the word is coming in our mind. I am leaving this world, and you get prepared for another world as I am leaving. A person like 22 years old, right? He passed away. So what lesson we have to get from his death? Means nobody has a guarantee that he would live long life. Nobody. And one another person came to me and said, just do dua for another brother who is also around 25, 30 years old. He went to some other country and came back to India, and he was spending his vacation and saying, Allah Almighty has taken his soul. So what to do then? What to think then? What to ponder then? And why are we right here? So that we can think, not only just thinking and then going away. Thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and continue thinking that this life has an end. And we have to move from this world to another world, which is grave. And nobody knows what is going to happen in the grave. Yes, Allah knows. Yes, His Prophet ﷺ knows what is going to happen. There would be question and answer. If all the question has right answer, Alhamdulillah, you are blessed then. And if you did not pass that examination, so you are in great loss. And for that question and answer, you have to get ready in this world. If you have right belief in Allah and in His Prophet and His book and angels and whatever the article of faith are, Alhamdulillah, you are blessed. Very first man on the earth is Sayyidina Adam al-Islam. Everyone knows that historically. And he is Nabi. So it means Allah Almighty has sent first person on the earth, that was Mu'min. That was Mu'min. Means every single person is actually coming from the lineage of a Mu'min. If somebody is going this way or that way, not going right path, means he is not listening to the lesson of Sayyidina Adam, to the lesson of very first man, very first Mu'min of the earth. So what to do after me or after you or after your beloved is gone from this world? In only one riwayat I will present right here, and then inshallah we will move toward the Fatiha. Sayyidina Junaid Baghdadi alayhi rahmatul rizwan, I believe everyone knows his name. One of his murid came to him and his face was like so worried. Sayyidina Junaid Baghdadi alayhi rahmatul rizwan did ask, what happened to you? He said, I saw my mom by kashf. My mom is dead. I saw my mom, she is in grave punishment. She is in great punishment. I don't know what to do. Sayyidina Junaid Baghdadi alayhi rahmatul rizwan did not say anything. Only what he did, 105,000 timing, he did Kalima Sharif. Who? Sayyidina Junaid Baghdadi alayhi rahmatul rizwan. 105,000 timing, he did recited Kalima Sharif. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. And right after he finished his Kalima, he saw the same murid, not in presence, but mukashafa. The murid is in his own house, and Sayyidina Imam Junaid Baghdadi alayhi rahmah in his own house. He saw that murid in kashf and asked him in kashf, what about you now? I'm looking like you are so blessed now, feeling good now. What about your mom now? He said, Alhamdulillah, I found my mom is getting the mercy of Allah Almighty. I found my mom, she is getting the mercy. She is getting the kindness of Allah Almighty. But I don't know how is that. Sayyidina Junaid Baghdadi alayhi rahmah did not say any word, anything. The thing that he said, Allah Almighty's Messenger Sayyidina Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, he said in one of his hadiths, the person who has passed away from this world and his relative, his friend, his family member, if they have recited 105,000 times in Kalimat Sharif, Allah will forgive the sin that he or she has done. So, I did know this hadith, but I did not find this hadith in the book of hadith. But when I have recited this hadith, I found you are saying that your mom is blessing now with the barakat of Allah Almighty. So, I am quite sure this is the hadith of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can think, when a person is reciting Kalimat Sharif La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, by reciting a kalima in this measurement amount, if some person is forgiven, so we are quite sure if a person passed away and relatives and family members and other Muslim brother and sister, if they are reciting Holy Quran, inshallah, our marhumin will be forgiven and they will be given their destiny, and which is Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. May Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala give us tawfiq and hidayah to recite the Quran and Hadith and Kalimat as it is mentioned in Quran and Hadith. May Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala make a mercy upon whoever passed away, especially the marhum that is mentioned right now. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلاما عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل يا أيها الكافرون لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد لكم دينكم ولي دين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. وإلهكم إله واحد لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يعوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. إن رحمة الله قريب من المحسنين. لقد جاءكم رسول من أنفسكم عزيز عليه ما عنتم حريص عليكم بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم. فإن تولوا فقل حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين. ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين وكان الله بكل شيء عليما. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلاما عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب القبر وقنا عذاب الحشر وقنا عذاب الدين وقنا عذاب الدارين وقنا عذاب الميزان وقنا عذاب الصراط وقنا عذاب السقرات وقنا عذاب الدجال الأعور الكذاب. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. We have recited Quran Pak, we have recited Durud Pak, we have presented Shirini. O Allah, if we have done any mistake during recitation of Quran, O Allah, forgive us and accept us all the recitation of Quran Pak, Ya Allah, Ya Rahman. O Allah, send its sawab to our holy beloved Prophet Sayyidina Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. And by the intercession of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, O Allah, send its sawab to all companion of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And by the intercession of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, send its sawab to all mujtahideen, salihin, shuhada kiram, awliya kiram, Chishtiya, Qadiriya, Naqshbandiya, Suhrawardiya, Ashrafiya, Radawiya, Rifa'iya, and all our friends of Allah around the globe, Ya Allah. Allah, send its sawab to all mu'mineen, mu'minat, muslimin, muslimat, whole believers in the whole world, Ya Allah, Ya Rahman. And especially the person, those who recently passed away, if they are passed away in the state of Iman, O Allah, just send its sawab to all these marhumin, Ya Rabbal Alameen. O Allah, make their last place of Jannah, Ya Rabb. Allah, give the relatives and friends and everyone who were attached to them sabr and salwan, Ya Rabbal Alameen, and patience, Ya Rabbal Alameen. O Allah, give us tawfiq to recite the Quran and Hadith and Salatu Salam and all the kalimat to make it easy for these recently passing away our marhumin to be part of Jannah, Ya Rabbal Alameen. May Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala accept our all good deeds, Ya Allah. Whatever recited right here, whatever is recited at home, whatever will be reciting inshallah at home, O Allah, accept all by the intercession of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, and make all these marhumin maghfurin, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Forgive their sins, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Forgive their all small or big sin by the grace of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. And whatever we have done, we have committed mistake intentionally or unintentionally, O Allah, forgive us and accept our Fatiha, Ya Rabbal Alameen. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيئنا وحبيبنا وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلاما عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين حق لا إله إلا الله سيدنا محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Inshallah we will do Salatu Salam, and then after that inshallah we will go downstairs for Langar. Bismillah.
يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك صلوات الله طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب شكر علينا ما ضاع لله داعي يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك صلوات الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا نبي الله، الصلاة والسلام عليك يا حبيب الله، الصلاة والسلام عليك يا نور من نور الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا شفيعنا يوم الجزاء. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في شان عظمة حبيبه الكريم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وسلم صلاة وسلام عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Everyone are requested to go downstairs to get the tabarruk. Yeah. Oh, left side of the hall, inshallah. Just move left side of hall to get the tabarruk bi-iznillah ta'ala. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.